There we go. Okay, so today on our Training Tuesday call, we are going to talk about just a reminder about the monthly bid buy training that is going to be next Wednesday. Our weekly procurement resource highlight will be the certification of no change for contract renewals. This is the time of the year where a lot of agencies are doing all their renewals, and so that document can come in handy so that the vendor doesn't have to complete all new disclosures, et cetera, if nothing has changed within the ownership structure. Fun fact of the day, and then for our bid buy activity this week, we're going to be going over a legacy contract load. So if you had any of those older contracts that were never put into bid buy, but now you have to do a renewal, or an older contract that wasn't put into bid buy, but you have to do a contract amendment or a change order, you can't do any of those activities until you have that original contract. So all it is you're creating a purchase order from scratch, and we'll walk through that. So first things first, though, brace yourselves. Fiscal year end is coming. We are now June 9th. We are really ramping things up. So the next several weeks are going to be can be fairly hectic with a lot of agencies. There's a lot of procurement activity to take place in the month of June. So a little bit of for our Game of Thrones fans, there's the meme. And I love this the meme generator just in Google. It's hilarious. You can put in anything. So, oh, this is the slide from last week, just the vendor training video, that link that is how to respond to RFPs for vendors. We did talk about this last week, though. So there is the link. The link's been added to the RFP attachments vendor instructions. So if you are putting out any new RFPs, please go to our procurement resource or where the job aids are and grab the updated vendor instructions. Okay, so our monthly bid buy training. So we've done this the last couple months remotely, and I think it's gone fairly well. So next Wednesday, June 17th, 9 a.m., you can just click on this link. Email went out to APOs and SPOs. I'll send probably another one again as well. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sticking to this schedule. Okay, so normally we'd be in a room together and we would just be moving at the pace of the room. But last time we actually ended up having over 250 people on the training, so we're going to stick to this schedule. We're going to be, this is very specific to bid buy. So 9 o'clock we'll be doing the introduction, a general overview, general navigation, how to get around in bid buy. Take a short little break. 10 a.m. we'll be doing a small purchase under $10,000. Take a short little break. 11 o'clock we'll do a small purchase 10,000 and over. And then we take a break for lunch, and then 1 o'clock we do release off master training. Now, these will be recorded. This time they were recorded last time as well. I think we did have some technical issues with the release off master training, so that one didn't get recorded. But if you guys were a part of the training, you would have received a forwarded link to the recordings probably the next day or so. So they will be recorded. And then here is the link. There is no password. You can just join. If you need to leave, that's totally fine. We understand it. We just want to be able to be a resource for you, and join us if you will next Wednesday at 9 a.m. I'm getting a message. I'm not seeing anything from your screen. Are you guys not seeing my screen? Looks like I'm sharing my screen from my end, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, Derek says I see it. Okay, thanks. I appreciate it, guys. All right, so for our weekly resource highlight, we have the certification of no change for contract renewal. So there is a link here, but I also want to pull it up and walk you through how we get there. So if I go to the CPOGS site into our procurement resources library. So I scroll down to the bottom. You know, you guys who have been on this call see we really utilize this procurement resource library quite a bit. It's in the solicitation and contract templates and forms. So that is where all our IFB templates, all our RFP templates, Forms A, Forms B, contract, all of our contract templates are here. There is a certification of no change for contract renewal documents. So let's open that up. And talk about it just for a second. So if you're doing a contract renewal, we still need we need disclosures, right? However, we do have this handy dandy form that if nothing has changed, you're going to complete it the way you normally would. Vendor, disclosing entity, very similar to our financial disclosures, but this is only 2 or 3 pages. The vendor, as you can see here, they will check these boxes and it needs to be signed. They're certifying that the information contained on the following forms originally submitted for the above referenced contract has not changed. So they have to check the box, financial disclosures, conflicts of interest form, as well as the standard certifications. So in going through here, then they do need to sign it again. They can't just send an email. Sometimes there's have been some questions like that where, well, the vendor sent an email or they mailed in a letter that said they don't need to, nothing has changed. That is not going to be in compliance. So what we need to do is have this form, and if you do end up having, if the vendor completes brand new disclosures anyway and they send it in, sometimes I've seen that happen. And if they're correct and you don't need to go back and forth, you don't have to use this form. I just think that sometimes, certainly if someone is new to procurement, they don't realize that this is an option, and it can save some time back and forth between the vendor. As we know, those financial disclosures and conflicts of interest form can sometimes be a little complicated. Okay, so in the second box here is information contained on the following forms originally submitted for the above reference contract has changed. I have attached the appropriate updated information. Note to disclosing entity, show the changes clearly on an attachment or submit new forms in their entirety. So if something has changed, they can just put it what has changed here as well. That is an option. Okay. Looks like we have a question here. The certification of no change is only if they're not registered in IPG, correct? If they are Forms B, they should submit a new Forms B. So yeah, the IPG is just a yearly renewal. But I also would, if they have actual, and I've seen this before, they are in IPG, but they had submitted financial disclosures and conflicts of interest forms separately, that would be okay. But if they are in IPG, you are correct that they would need to submit a new Forms B instead of doing a certification of no certification. I don't know why I can't say that correctly today. Certification of no change for contract renewal, which is the 2 pages. They would just submit a new Forms B, which is also 1 or 2 pages. Okay, so that is our weekly resource highlight. Any other questions regarding that little document? Okay. So our fun facts for today, I had 2. I couldn't go back and forth, so you know what? I just picked both of them. So June 9th, 1650, the Harvard Corporation, one of the 2 administrative boards of Harvard, was established. It was the very first legal corporation in the Americas. We're procurement folks. We deal with corporations all the time. The very first legal corporation in America was on this day. And as well, June, no, I shouldn't say as well, completely opposite. And additionally, June 9th, 1934, it's Donald Duck's birthday. He made his debut. So today is National Donald Duck Day. So for our bid by activity, we're going to be doing a legacy contract load. So any older contract that was not loaded into bid by but needs to be renewed, any contract amendments or change orders, like we said, we have to put that into the system first so that we can then go do a change order, etc. So before we get into that, do we have any other questions? Okay, not seeing any questions. Let's go out to bid by and walk through our legacy contract load. So we'll be in our training environment today. I went ahead and pulled up the job aid. So just as a reminder where those job aids live, let me go back. So in our CPOGS website, you go to bid by at the bottom, click on bid by, then we can click bid by resources for state agencies. That gets us to where all of our job aids are. We scroll down and we are going to click on contract QA load. The QA stands for quality assurance. So I'll pull that up and I'll just be working off the job aid back and forth as we are creating this purchase order. So you can see here, we are just creating a purchase order. You're not going to be doing a requisition and bid and any of that. This is just, we're creating a purchase order from scratch. Will be loaded into bid by, potentially established as a master blanket if that's the case. The most common are legacy contracts, that kind of what we just talked about, established prior to bid buy that will have ongoing activity such as renewals or change orders, or contracts newly established outside of bid buy that need to be entered into bid buy. Most of what we're going to see is it's an older contract that started in 2015 prior to bid buy, for instance, and for whatever reason it just was never loaded into bid buy, but now it's time to we have a renewal that's up. So we're going to create a purchase order. So bid buy home screen, we're going to click on the plus sign to the right of the bid buy logo, and we're going to create a purchase order. So I hit plus sign, purchase order. We do have an option. We're going to be creating a purchase order from scratch. That's the first option that's there. Now we do have the option open market versus a blanket. Now that really depends on, so you're going to have to reach out to somebody at your agency. If you're an agency that is utilizing the bid buy to SAP interface, that's going to have to be a blanket contract, a blanket purchase order, I should say, because only blanket purchase orders can go through the interface. However, if you are an agency that is manually entering information and contracts into SAP, you can just keep this as open market, because what happens is if we make this a blanket, there's a few additional fields that become required and we have to complete. So whatever is, I'm going to go with the more complicated one today. I should say more complicated on the bid buy side, just because there's a few extra fields that have to be completed. But then at that point, it goes through the interface and you don't have to manually enter it from scratch on the SAP side. So we'll make it a blanket. Okay, so we'll go back to our job aid, and I'll just flip back and forth as we're going between all our, so we have the blanket, short description. This should uniquely identify the procurement, as this is a searchable field. So I didn't even realize, wasn't sure what contract we were going to do. So we'll say, I don't know, contract. Okay, so for whatever that is, the type code is the, you select the appropriate type code. However, it was originally procured. Competitive sealed bidding, we'll say this was an IFB. Is this a small business? And then we get into the actual contract begin and end dates. Okay, so I'm scrolling down. Agency reference number, if that's something that your agency utilizes, the history behind this agency reference number is when we first went into bid buy, feedback from the agency was that you wanted to have some text box there. Sometimes if you have an internal PO number or something like that, that gets added here. So you can utilize that if you want. It's not a required field. Is this a small business set aside procurement? Yes or no. Say no for today. And once again, all our required fields have the asterisk next to it. So the actual contract begin and end date, you can click the calendar and go in here. We'll say this started, and we'll say it's a July 1 of 2016 was the begin date. The end date, we'll say it is June 30th of 2020. That's certainly applicable. We could see that that could be the case, that we're going to turn around and do a renewal here this week. Fiscal year of obligation, you just put in the proper fiscal year of obligation. So that would have been 17. We keep scrolling down. We get into some of the SAP vendor number. If you know the SAP vendor number, you have to reach out separately to get that. So you have the SAP vendor number. Once again, if you are not doing the, if you're not utilizing the bid buy to SAP interface, this is a required field, but if you put anything in there, it's going to take it. So if you're not using that interface, you could just put a placeholder number in here, and that's going to be fine because it's not interfacing with anything, right? Full SAP contract value. Now this is going to be just for that original PO, right? So this isn't going to be for the entire contract. We'll say, the first 5 years was, we'll say it was a $1.5 million. Now, when we go in and do the renewal, we would end up changing that because this PO is just for that initial term, okay? Let's see, release beginning and date, no. Depending if there was a BEP participation goal, yes or no. I guess for here we would say yes on a contract that size. Let's say the BEP percentage was 15, VBP was 3, and then the award amount. Now this is where it comes to be a little bit different. The award amount actually includes all your renewals. So we'll say, for this one it was $2.5 million for the entire award, which would include all renewals. And then we hit save and continue. And now we get our confirmation message that the changes were saved successfully. So now we move to the next tab. Items tab. We're going to add an open market item, and we're just going to do one item for the entire contract. So we don't need to go in and add every additional line item. So go items, add item. In the description, you just put in the description, initial term, and then you can put in, whatever it was. Then we have our fields down here that are quantity and our cost. You could just put 1 and then whatever the full cost of that emergence or the initial term was, which was, we said 1.5 million, didn't we? Yep. Okay. The NIGP code, you put in the appropriate NIGP code of what that was. We'll just say we'll pick whatever's the first one that pops up here. But you would match that to whatever the original procurement was. Okay. And then save and exit because we're only going to have one line item on this PO. And once again, we're only doing this PO because we're going to be renewing it. So you don't have to have all the line items if you had multiple line items. Okay, we get to our vendor. Now, if I go back to the job aid, look up an add vendor, search for vendor, we're going to select the vendor. Now you see we have a note here. If using the SAP interface, we're going to check include primary vendor in the vendor distributor list checkbox in the distributors sub-tab. So once I add the vendor here, I'll show you exactly what this is. And once again, if you're keeping this as an open market and manually adding the contract in SAP, you do not have to do, or if you're using any open market PO, you won't have to do this step of checking that box. But we will have to add your vendor either way. Let's see, we'll put Dave's Corporation as the contract. So you go in and select that vendor, add the vendor. So all the vendors there. Now that distributors sub-tab, if you're utilizing the SAP interface, distributors sub-tab is here, and you have to check that box. So checking the include primary vendor in the vendor distributor list is an SAP it will throw an SAP error if you try to send this PO without checking that box. Okay, but it's not a required field, so that's where where you really want to make sure you're following the job aid there and seeing all those notes. Okay, we're good there. Now we're going to we can skip routing. Routing is just where you can look back later and see who approved when. The control tab, since we are doing a blanket master contract or a blanket PO, this now makes this a required field. So we have to put in for SAP here the beginning and dates again. So we did July 1 of 2016. It starts to June 30th, 2020. Okay, and then we have to add the department that it's for. In this case, if you want to pick the department that you can only have, so if this is a agency specific master contract or something like that, that you only have specific departments, you can do that. Or if it's for all org, you can do agency umbrella master control. So we're going to say this is an agency specific contract. So we're only going to select CPOGS as the only person or the only agency that can use this. Save and continue. Now we have lost our errors there. Okay, back to our job aid really quick. Master blanket, this is what I just did. Where's the putting in all that information? You know, if cooperative purchasing is allowed, you would check and then you go in and add. So if you have, if it was a joint purchase, you could control all that in the control tab. In the attachments, we're just going to add the fully executed contract. Okay, so attachments, you guys know how to do this. We add file, choose file, and I'm going to go in and standalone contract template. We're going to say that was the fully executed contract from 2016, right? So that's that old contract. Save and exit. And then we always check here whether we're showing it to the vendor and whether it's confidential. So we're not showing the vendor and we're marking confidential. So I check those boxes so it matches our job aid and then hit save and continue. Okay, notes we don't have there. Change orders and reminders. You don't have to add anything there yet either. See, we have another question. I'd like to add the renewals, which were not yet executed in the items tab, as last year's instructions allowed. Can you discuss why the difference or mention it? Mention if we have the option to do it. Yeah, so good question. So in the past, some agencies would just zero out renewal items, so you could put it on this PO as a renewal option. It would just be $0. So, but the thinking in terms of deleting it. So if you go back to the renewal job aid, and we we instruct you to delete any renewal options because you're not for that PO. It is just for this one initial term. So then when you go to do a renewal option, you can you do a change order to add dollars to that. And so that next PO is only for just that renewal. So I think a lot of it has to do with the thinking of, well, the PO in the past, I think there was more of a thinking where the PO was the contract, and that's really just not the case. So the PO is where the contract lives, and it's a contract vehicle, but PO is just for whatever that active term is. So whether if you're in the initial term, you're not going to have all the renewal terms on the line items tab, so we delete those. I hope that's kind of clear. The reasoning why that's there, because then the next PO that comes is just going to be the PO for that renewal. So it's not going to be including all the other things. So at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is the SPO is going to go back and look at the contract, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a line item that, you have potential renewal options, like bid by says, oh yeah, there are some renewal options. You have to go back to the contract anyway. So it really doesn't matter what's on the PO with your line items. Do we have the option to do it the old way? I don't think so, because I guess, and we can talk about this a little bit more if you'd like, but kind of working with the idea that we are getting away from having renewal options on a PO that you can't even renew yet, or say, what if a renewal doesn't get executed on time? Now that contract is dead, but bid by it looks like, oh, well, you could do another renewal option. I think it's just, it to me, it seems a lot cleaner to not have renewal options on your line items, because you have to go back to the original contract anyway. So I think there potentially could be some confusion on the part of, a year or 2 years from now, someone looking into bid buy and saying, oh yeah, well, we have another renewal option left or two, but well, the previous renewal didn't get exercised in time, and so now it's actually a dead contract. So I'm just really leery about having information in bid buy that doesn't match, and there's just any potential we have to take away from those potential issues. I think we want to do that. Okay, so then we get to the summary tab, and then we submit for approval. We have all our attachments in there, our fully executed contract, and we submit for approval. And then it will go through the approval paths, and then since we're in the lovely training environment, we get to automatically approve, which is fun. Then we will, let me go back to the job aid real quick just to show you exactly where I'm at. We did the conduct approvals. You go in and find the PO again, right, from the home screen. It would be living in your recent documents or POs ready to send. And then the difference here is we're going to select set to printed status, right? We don't want to email the vendor just because that's going to cause confusion and you're immediately going to get a phone call. Like, hey, why did I just receive this PO? We had a contract from 4 years ago. So we actually are going to change this to set to printed status just so that it will be able to go through the interface as well as getting into that sent status. That's where we want to see once this accounting transaction is done. Oh no, what I miss? Supplier partner is not valid. Interesting. What I miss? Okay, we have our vendor, we have our distributors. Sub tab, I thought maybe I didn't hit that one the right way. Okay. Well, one thing I do have, I have this handy dandy. It's called ERP interface. Let's see what that says. That error, that SAP error isn't ringing a bell. Supplier partner is not valid. Oh, probably what's happened because Dave's Corporation doesn't have the right SAP vendor number. That's probably all that is. But let's double check. I really like this document, the SAP interface error. Yeah, supplier number is not passed in the ERP. Yep. So all that means is that error, I selected Dave's Corporation, which isn't a real corporation. So that's why it's throwing this error. So you can always, so it's not going to let it go through but so for what we're dealing with today, if you ran into this, you would just have to go back and make sure that the SAP vendor number is correct. Right, yeah, nothing on the vendor tab interfaces to SAP. So Amy, do you know why that error is there? Now that I think about it, I'm not sure if I've done one of these in train to begin with. So I'm not sure exactly while I'm running into that. Oh, the vendor number entered on the general tab is not recognized by SAP. Okay. So you won't run into that, but if you do see that error, that just means that this vendor number, right? I put in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, is just not recognized. All right. So do we have any other questions? Can you provide a location or send that document out, please? So that document, the SAP vendor error. Yeah, I can send that out to everybody. I don't think it's anything that is, yeah. Let me double check because I might not have the most up-to-date one because this is from 2018. But you know what I'll do is I'll see if we can find out an updated one because if there are new ERP error messages, I want to make sure you guys have the most recent one. It's on the website, Randy says. All right, well, I'll make sure that I grab it from the website, but let me show you guys. When you say the website, Randy, is it on the, like our training? By, oh, I got to go in there. I don't want to do that. All right, I'll send out the link though. Okay. All right. I think we're good for today. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you next Tuesday. Thanks.